Another week, another Jujutsu Kaisen episode, another animation analysis video. Lots of things to talk about in this one because it's a shorter Gosso episode. But let's start with the elephant in the room, which is the schedule. The cat's finally out of the bag. Episode 7 was bad. People defended that, saying that it's just the storyboards that's bad and just blamed it on the episode director. But anyone with eyes would have also noticed that even for the scenes where the storyboards were highly ambitious, the animation just couldn't keep up. Another argument that a good amount of people make about this production is that all anime have bad production schedules. So Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 is not particularly bad. And first of all, no, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 is a particularly awful schedule. And two, that is such a non-existent point. That is as dumb as saying that most CGI in anime is bad and therefore Exarm is not that bad. Now, I really don't want to spend the first 10 minutes of every single JJK video talking about the same thing, that is the bad production schedule, but I'm having to because of how relevant it is to the production and how much it is starting to show. Just know that it's horrible. And I genuinely have no idea how they're going to finish the rest of the episodes without any lead time whatsoever. This episode finished a couple of days before the broadcast time, so that's going to be true for almost all the episodes going forward. So yeah, I'm not going to waste any more time talking about Jujutsu Kaisen's production conditions, as I'm definitely going to be making a production hell video for it anyway. I'm sure that we're in for more delays though. Surely they're going to take another 3-week break after the first core ends, so after episode 12 or 13 maybe. So as it usually goes with good-looking shows that have horrible production conditions, it's just going to be a couple of superhuman beings doing everything and more. So who are the superhumans who have been carrying Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 so far? The first name I have to take is actually the director himself, Shota Gojo. If you're talking about direction and strictly direction work only, then Gosso has already done more work for Season 2 than Sungo Park did for Season 1. Sungo Park only directed 2 episodes of Season 1 while also doing storyboards for 2. Gosso has already done storyboards for 3 episodes and the ED sequence while also directing one of those episodes and the ED, and also being the assistant episode director for episode 8. Now of course, if we compare the number of sequences they've animated, then Park obviously blows everyone else out of the water. He animated in 6 episodes and in 2 of them he just made layouts for like 80% of the whole episode. And on Gosso's sides, he's done key animation for 2 episodes, but this amount of directorial work is still kind of abnormal in this production schedule. I really hope Gosso is not sacrificing his health to do this, but he very well could be, because there's another thing that he absolutely will not sacrifice, and that is his ambition. This episode was again storyboarded by Gosso, and it's just as creative and complicated as his episodes have always been. The processing of his storyboards were done by Teppei Okuda. Okuda storyboarded the B part of episode 6. He did a great job there, and he did an amazing job here as well. In this specific episode's case, the base has already been built by Gosso's awesome storyboards, and Okuda processed them to near perfection as much as the schedule allowed it. As for the key animation side of the things go, it was again just a few artists doing exceptional work and animating large chunks of content. The most important component of the animation, however, for Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 so far has always been the animation directors, and that is true for this episode as well. Yosuke Yajima has done incredible correction work so far in this season, and for this episode as the chief animation director, he continues to do exceptional work. We also still do have chief animation director Sayaka Koiso supervising the whole project and also pitching in with very important corrections. When I was breaking down Shibuya Arc's PV, I came across 2 drawings that I thought were both corrections by Sayaka Koiso. I was right about the Geto drawing, but I was wrong about Yuji. Yuji here was actually corrected by Yosuke Yajima. That goes to show just how close Yajima is able to make the character look to the character design sheet, which again makes sense. Yosuke Yajima is insanely talented, and he did the same for Chainsaw Man. This episode also marks a good amount of noticeable melting. However, by noticeable, I'm talking about noticeable from my perspective. It's still at a level where most people absolutely will not notice it because the character models are far more simpler. And on top of that, the animators also have a good amount of creative freedom on how to draw the characters. So since not every single scene has to go through the chief animation director, it won't further complicate the workload for the Doga artists. Let's finally get into the scene by scene breakdown though. Just a camcorder type recording of all the characters talking about Gojo. A lot of charm to the character designs. They're not particularly detailed or anything. The compositing is also absolutely wonderful to make the animation look like it was shot through a lens, especially noticeable in this Todo shot. Now we get to an incredible bit of character acting moment here, just straight up wonderful. The body language is just so well animated and also exaggerated by the animation. Here the effects animation, that is the steam coming out of Gojo's mouth, it is used to display just how exhausted Gojo is. So the fluidity of the animation here is props to Sumin Oh. It was later corrected by Sayaka Koiso herself, which is why this looks so goddamn good. And now we get to the main part of the episode itself, immediately starting off with heavily tricky shots. This panning shot looks a little bit awkward, however, because I understand what they're trying to do. They're not going to put too much focus on the crowd, just shown in a way that they're out of focus most of the time. But in this specific shot where it's literally a crowd pan, like Gojo does not enter the frame until the very end here. Unlike this shot where Gojo is directly in focus, so even the crowd being blurred does not really matter. But here, because our focus is directly on the crowd because we got nothing else to focus on, it looks kind of awkward. Gosso's idea of spacing, however, is just as amazing as always. You can tell the depth in every single element here. You can tell that Gojo is standing at an elevated space, and it gives us an idea of the entire space as well. Whoever drew these characters also did an incredible job, going as far as animating the crater that was made when the 2 special grade curses attacked Gojo, and all of the dead bodies as well. That's very important for scene consistency. It's dropped later on in this episode because, I mean, they had no choice, but for the very first shot, it's very important to have scene consistency. Just the most simple type of speed lines that you could use on his fingers there. As I've said before, Gojo's hands are the most sexualized part of his entire body. Very important to animate that properly. It's literally fan service. I would go as far as saying this is fan service to the same level as this is fan service. Wonderful use of CGI backgrounds here. The animation does not feel floaty whatsoever. Gojo's legs here do feel a little bit off, however. It actually looks like someone's walking on stilts rather than putting their legs forwards. Toes are pointing straight on both the legs. If it was like a little bit sideways, that would make more sense, I think. But overall, this is a very strong shot. I love the way the shadows are animated as well. And it reminds me of a very similar kind of shot from episode 1 as well. The transition between the 2 cuts are also really well done. That's not just a regular pan. It's a pan that's going in an arc. It's going in this shape. It's rotating the camera while also moving upwards. It's like carrying the momentum of Gojo walking forwards into the next cut. I mean, that's just the camera mastery of Shota Gochizuno expected out of him. Really nice sense of speed on this fist here. Just smears coming out of it as if they're literally tearing the fist apart. When Gojo pulls Jogo towards him, again, the speed is so well conveyed. The whiplash on Jogo's neck with his cheek going backwards is just so well done. Gosso is putting us right in the middle of the combat here. It's very engaging to do storyboards like this. With very close shots such as this one, sometimes if it's a bit too fast, it does get a little hard to follow for the average viewer. However, here, because of the way the timing is done, it actually looks pretty damn good. And just as I say that, we get to a cut that is not all that nice. The camera is still carrying all that weight forward, similar to the cut that I talked about previously. But the fact is that this just looks awkward, as if this is not how the shot was initially storyboarded. Gojo is remaining stationary for the entire duration. So it feels like the shot was zoomed in on for the sole reason of not having to animate Gojo, because it's just not finished, and the Jogo drawings just goes to prove that as well. That is absolutely not a finished drawing. That's still in the layout phase. This is a shot that I assume will be finished in the Blu-ray version, because from the next shot, again, we go back to very detailed shots, especially this one. Look at all that detail on Gojo's fabric. When I saw this initially, I thought that Ninuma had come back, but if you think that Ninuma has come back, it is either of two things. Either it actually is Ninuma or it is Sota Yamazaki. And in this case, yeah, it's Sota Yamazaki. Yamazaki worked uncredited for this episode. I guess he's just helping out Gosso. But yes, Yamazaki is one of the best animation directors in the industry currently. Obviously, he's going to make exceptional corrections. The highlight of this shot is, first of all, the perspective drawing. It is absolutely flawless. The foreshortening here is amazing. Secondly, the shading on Jogo's hands. This goes beyond even realistic shading. This is like artificial shading, just detail added for the sake of adding detail. And of course, since we're talking about Sota Yamazaki, there's one thing he's particularly incredible at, which is fabric. Just look at this drawing that he made in Chainsaw Man, for example. The folds look so thick. It looks meaty. It looks as if I could bite into the folds. Same thing is happening here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of shading. That is so excessive and I love it. It's so good. The muscle anatomy of Gojo's neck here is also so well done, so well detailed. The right amount of lines and the perfect amount of shadow highlights as well. On top of that, it's also moving. Like the character acting animation is there as well. I'd assume the whole thing is not corrected by Yamazaki. It's just animated by him. Another correction that is absolutely awesome. The final version actually does look inferior to the correction here actually, because when it comes to the Gojo drawings here, it's already gone. He actually looks really cool here. So the best bit of this drawing here is the fabric animation on Gojo, and half of that is just gone in the initial few milliseconds of the shot. So if you really want to appreciate this cut, you need to look at the correction. Next is Hanami's fist, and again, the speed is very well exaggerated with just how smeary it is. It is actually 2 cuts. Yes, that changes into this cut, and in this cut it's even more smeared, and as soon as it makes contact with Gojo just turns off the smears. Incredible detailing with the line work and the shadows again. I think this is still Yamazaki shadows. Just look at how organic the shadows here are animated. It's not like complete lines the way Sayaka Koiso would do it, or even Takuya Ninuma would do it. The way Ninuma does his shading feels like very deliberate and just the exact right amount of excessive shading, if that makes sense. In the case of Soto Yamazaki, his shading is just very natural and organic. It's as if he's going with the flow when it comes to shading. Another cut that is very limited, you actually can't see the kick that Gojo is performing on Hanami. It just cuts to that with a panning shot. All these characters are CGI. If you really focus on them, you can tell that's the case, but again, they're out of focus and they move by very fast, so it's not really easy to notice. The only characters who are 2D are the ones that Hanami crashes through here. So these three characters here, I think are 2D. Yes, from the shading I can tell. The best thing about this definitely has to be the compositing. The background is full CGI, and then you got multiple layers of CGI crowd, and then you got Hanami, you got the effects animation, crowd characters again just popping up when Hanami crashes through them, and characters behind Hanami as well, those crowd characters. Considering the animation of a lot of the cuts in this episode were finished last minute, the compositing comes after that. So even though this is like the most rushed compositing ever, it absolutely does not show in the work. This is exceptional compositing work. Every single element layered to absolute perfection. Now we're getting to the animation highlight of this entire episode as a whole. This is my favorite sequence from this episode. From a technical point of view, I would say a sequence coming later is more impressive just because of just how much work went into that. But from a pleasing standpoint, I would say this sequence by Daniel Kim is the best. And after this, I really don't know why Daniel Kim is not credited as the main animator, because he's worked on a lot of episodes already, and every single one of his works have been very polished and look phenomenal. Love the way he's drawing Gojo's pose here. I don't know if he's using a reference for this, however. I know he uses a reference to draw hands, which is why his hand animation is so delicate and beautifully done every time he does it. But just the weight in Gojo's hops there is so well done. It is incredible. And before he throws Jogo, look at the weight distribution in his body. Look at how he's twisting his body to the side. And the animation itself is also really cool, how he's doing double anticipation here. You would expect all of this build up to then release chaotically with that smear. He actually takes to slow motion again and then cuts to the next scene. So that's what I'm referring to as double anticipation here. So you got the build up, you got the release, which is actually just build up again, and then you just cut. The body language on Hanami here is again just flawlessly animated. In this case, I don't even know how you would use a reference. I doubt there's a person out there who looks like Hanami. But I mean, you can still use a regular human being reference for monsters such as this one. But the thing is, you can't put a human on the side of a wall. And the way he's animating here is very specific in that context, that Hanami is standing on the side of a wall right now. So as soon as she lands, she has one of the footholds, that is the vines coming on her left foot. Her right foot is not attached yet, which is why she has to balance her right side. And notice how when she gets up, her body is tilted towards the left a little bit because of gravity. But after that, the vines are attached to her right leg as well. So she got a tight foothold on both sides now. So her body now shifts from leaning left to a neutral position. Hanami then looking up though has very noticeable doga errors. The real problem with this is not just the inconsistent doga work, which is causing the melt between these two drawings. It's also the incorrect doga work. Like this drawing has errors in it. Like in this drawing, if you look at Hanami's belt, it's obeying the laws of gravity, it's pointing downwards. But in the next drawing, when she looks up, in this case, it's pointing sideways. Like it stops following gravity and stays there. So I'm assuming it was not conveyed to the in-betweeners that Hanami is supposed to be sideways here, because they're gonna animate her from top up as usual, and is later just flipped over and composited sideways. And because the production is so rushed, you get occasions where ideas are not properly conveyed between teams, which is how you get stuff like this. And it's not just Hanami's belt disobeying gravity, it's also the tattoos on her arm here, particularly this one on the bicep and this one on the tricep, just disappears starting this drawing. I'm not pointing this out as bad animation or anything. I mean, these are clearly errors, but I mean, they're so negligible that it does not really detract from the quality of the show. I'm just pointing them out as further proof that, yeah, this is not a very healthy production at all. Amazing animation on Jogo's face here. Again, the character acting is so masterful. The way he's vibrating because of the speed is also really well conveyed. Clothing animation, amazing. And the anatomy of the inside of his mouth. Like, look at the bottom of the tongue here. It's so well drawn. If I had a nickel for every time I've said the bottom of the tongue is so well drawn while breaking down a Jujutsu Kaisen episode, I have 2 nickels, which is not much, but it's weird that it's happened twice. But yeah, these drawings are genuinely amazing. Part of the reason, of course, being Daniel Kim's animation, but an equally significant component being the corrections, in this case by Yurika Nakanishi. And yeah, Jogo just comes smearing in and crashes on the side of the wall. You can see how the characters in the crowd, they're standing. So this is the ceiling, it's not the floor. And now that's still consistent, this is the side of the wall. But from the way this is shot, it's the base right now. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you expect from a Gosso storyboard. Also consistent in the next cut as well. This wonderful Gojo cut, he's coming down, but now actually inverted from the way it was shown with Jogo. This time the crowd characters are pointing this way. So down is now on Gojo's right, whereas down was on Jogo's left. Always more to Gosso storyboards than meets the eye. As for the animation here, Gojo's hair is really well animated. His clothes are also well animated, and also the shadow going past his face reminds me of the new cut that Yo Yoshinari made for Cyberpunk. I love shadow animation in general. This cut now finally breaks the illusion. Sideways is now on the side. Jogo just comes down to the camera. His body language is wonderfully animated as usual, and the morphing animation on his hand, yeah, that is so well done. Daniel's cuts are just always moving. A tremendous number of keyframes in every single one of his cuts. These are the kind of cuts that in-betweeners hate to work on because the workload just massively increases for them as well. Because I don't think Daniel is doing the in-betweening for all of his cuts. That would be like insane level of workload. So I've always wondered how Doga artists do in-betweening for, let's say, Ota's scenes from One Piece. Those look like they would be genuinely impossible for an in-betweener to work on. Again, Daniel came with his hand animation, always awesome. Look at the perspective on this hand here. So precise. The way he draws the character also have like a lot of angular shape, a lot of straight lines being used, which is not the way Sayaka Koiso does this, right? Look at the character acting on Hanami here. Like, this is a completely unorthodox character design. People don't have roses on their shoulder usually, and roots growing out of their eyes. And on top of that, it is such an unorthodox angle as well, like placing the camera here. It's not perfectly overhead, it's a little bit tilted. So doing character acting work on that is just exceptionally done. Hanami turning off her domain is displayed entirely through the compositing. You see that green glow just going away. This cut flows so well. The background animation is absolutely precise. Yeah, the sense of volume as the roots come out is just fantastic. The way the rubble is formed as well when the roots are coming through them. Yeah, the sense of three-dimensionality on all the vines and the rubble is just so incredibly well done. And this is what I was talking about in terms of his blocky designs. So these are supposed to be circular, right? They're supposed to go in one arc, but the way Daniel is drawing them, it's like straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line. So he's giving them edges and corners. Looking at the beginning of this cut, it is drawn mostly like that. It just goes in one swoop arc. But then I guess Daniel's keyframes properly kick in and it goes in like the blocky fashion again. The camera is pulled back here and it's again done flawlessly. The detail on Hanami is reducing as she's going further away from the camera. This is my favorite cut from Daniel Kim's sequence and the highlight of this episode entirely for me. This cut and the next cut with Jogo's character acting. First Gojo and Jogo both. So this cut is clearly a very important cut because it was corrected first by Yurika Nakanishi and then it went through the chief animation director again, being Yosuke Yajima, and he recorrected it. What Nakanishi did, I'm assuming, is just complete the drawing while also leaving in most of Daniel Kim's idiosyncrasies with the way he draws characters. Like, look at Gojo's eyes here. It has that blocky design that Daniel Kim uses. What Yajima did here is just smoothen out all of those rough edges. We no longer have the blockiness and sharpness. We have much more smoother facial features, which is how Sayaka Koiso's character designs look. As for the animation, it's again wonderful. I just love the snappiness of Gojo's head turn there. POV, you're an unattended child in front of EDP 445. The next cut is more of Daniel's wonderful character acting. Probably his best character acting work ever, honestly. It is highly exaggerated to convey the raw emotion in Jogo. And again, I have to highlight, he can't really use references for this because a cyclops-faced individual with corks on the side of their heads does not exist. And to convey the emotion, all he can really use here is the eye, the singular eye, and the mouth. And you can see how he's doing that through these stretch of drawings. Right now, it is just the regular old Jogo face. He's still nervous, of course, but this is not a special face or anything. But the way it changes to desperation, look at that. That is so seamlessly done. So what's happening here is that his eyes are widening even more. And on top of that, his irises are being made smaller. Or why am I saying plural? His iris is being made smaller. So that's going to make his pupil look even bigger. And that's pretty much it. Wide eyes and wide mouth as well to convey the urgency. Combined with that, perfect lip syncing, which you rarely get to see in anime, and great body language animation on Jogo as well. This cut where Gojo bounces around Hanami's branches has really nice Gojo drawings. Like going frame by frame from the very beginning, like look at this Gojo drawing. That's funny. Then you see Gojo jump on one of the branches. He pretty much gets squished here. That's a Luffy design if I've ever seen one. Build up, release. With the release, there's a pose. After the really cool dancing pose, we get him spinning around the wine. All the while his anatomy is perfectly consistent, and now's when the Nakanishi corrections kick in. These drawings are way too consistent for Daniel to have done it himself, particularly the ones here. And Gojo goes feral mode again here. Man, that's so gorgeous. If the other correction by Yajima didn't already exist, this is the one I would use as a thumbnail. And it only lasts for one frame. But your eye does register it in usual motion, I guess. Barely. It just barely gets registered. Going frame by frame, I can truly appreciate it. The way Daniel is animating here again, just so goddamn natural. Gojo does a preparatory step there, and then he just reacts to the vines accordingly. Gosso with the storyboard is again putting it right in between the action again. This time, however, it's much better executed compared to what we got previously in this episode. The individual drawings themselves always look really cool. There's a genuine goal of making Gojo look as scary as possible here without making him look ugly. And that's a very difficult task, but the staff pulled it off so well. From everything I just talked about related to Daniel Kim's animation, you must have a pretty good idea of everything that he's so good at. But if there's one thing specifically to take away in his animation, it's again going to be the references that he uses with hand motion to create animations like these. I refuse to believe that this is not referenced, by the way. There has to be some level of reference used here. The hand anatomy is just absolutely gorgeous. From this side, it's not that complicated to draw. This animation, from here to this, I could do it. But then he rotates both of the hands. Now we see the inside of the hand. That I could never do. And it's also delicate, which is again so necessary because this is Gojo's hands. And I also love the weight behind Gojo just ripping the roots out. Again, a stark contrast to the initial portion of the episode. Say for example, Gojo ripping Jogo's hand out. That felt like it has no weight behind it. This time the execution is quite a bit similar. It is still a panning shot, but on top of that it's animated, which makes a whole lot of difference. Like all of these build-up frames combined with the camera tracking makes the release just extremely satisfying. And also the camera angles are incredibly engaging. Look at this. Look at where the camera is placed here. Something that only Gosso would think about doing. And then we do a 180 of that, but then they also obey the 180 rule, because when Hanami was on the left side, Gojo was on the right side. And now when we flipped Hanami over, she's on the right side, but now when you show Gojo, he's on the left side, obeying the 180 rule to keep the flow of scenes consistent. Gosso's storyboards just never fall short of perfection. You got tattoos on Hanami's chin now, which disappears for this frame. It disappears for 4 frames. You start off with it, it disappears, and it reappears again. And expected for stuff like that to happen, you wouldn't notice it unless you're an ultra nerd like me. Look at the slide camera movement here, like it's swaying just ever so slightly. So Gosso is making it look like this was recorded by a hand cam by a person, which is just such a unique way of doing that. This could have been a still frame with zero movement, but just that little bit of movement makes that cut unique. And that's what Gosso tries to do, either with complicated angles such as this one, or with unique ideas like the camera moving a little bit. He wants to make every single cut stand out. Very unique idea here. Again, the way the heads are popping up looks really cool, which then turns into like a painting with a fisheye effect. The crowd, the characters here are animated, which is genuinely ridiculous. It is incredibly difficult and should not be expected, but when we do get to see it in instances such as this one, it blows my mind that it's actually being done. Choso, on the other hand, another very good correction by Yosuke Yajima. I don't think Choso has looked this good yet. Particularly love his hands here. The anatomy is absolutely perfect, with the perspective being so complicated. That's a lot of detail for a shot that is not that close to the camera. Look at this cut now. Most people wouldn't know why this is so special. All of these drawings are individual drawings for Gojo. So this could have been a still frame, but Gosso wanted this to be animated. So what does this mean? This means hell for the in-betweeners. Like for a shot, like a still frame like this one, the animation director, that is Yosuke Yajima, made the correction, and the Doga artist just traced that, which is then given for digital coloring. But with a shot such as this one, it is not that simple. Because this is animated, it has many keyframes. All those keyframes need to be traced by the Doga artist, who then also make in between drawings to make the animation more fluid. So that's an insane amount of workload for a cut that could have just been a still frame. And that's just scratching the surface of this cut, by the way. It has so much more moving components to it. First of all, the effects animation with the blood particles. Gojo is layered behind the effects animation, but then there's a whole character layered behind him, which is Jogo. And then after Jogo comes in, there's also another layer of effects animation, which is the smoke behind Jogo. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of animation. Plus the background makes it 5 layers that the compositing artist needs to layer properly. Mad props to every single team involved. That's not even the end of the cut, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there's There's more to it. So at the last second, we get stereo punches from both Jogo and Hanami's side. So that's another fist to draw, along with effects animation. Love the way the shadows are animated in this cut, so well done. It also distracts you from the otherwise pretty awful crowd. The characters just look very chill, as if people weren't ripped apart in this area, and most of them are not even in cosplay outfits. Cuts starting from here are animated by Isuta Meister. Isuta is the main animator of Black Clover, which is to say he has a good level of experience making highlights in terrible working condition. The highlights here are still the drawings on Gojo. Gojo looks extremely consistent, especially with this character acting sequence here. His body language is so well animated, along with just the drawings themselves look so good. Even with the heavy levels of compositing, the drawings are placed front and center and it looks perfect. It's not even blurred. You can tell that there's a compositing layer without even interrupting the detail in the drawings. Love the pose on Hanami here as well. She's absolutely getting crushed against the wall while Gojo just casually moves forward. These few drawings are also really cool. When Gojo's infinity just reaches the edge of the wall, it just turns into like a circular panel and then just crushes Hanami again. This cut I'm assuming is again corrected by Sota Yamazaki. I can tell from the way the hair is drawn. The way Jogo is drawn here looks completely different from the way Daniel drew him, and the body language on Jogo is also animated completely differently from the way Daniel drew it. This feels more cartoonish, whereas Daniel's was like realistic, that it was borderline creepy. I love both approaches, but I prefer Daniel's because I think it's more technically impressive. There's a compositing effect now on the edge of Jogo's eye, with a few lines to show the veins popping and like a little bit of redness throughout the edge to show that he's really straining here. Gojo just turns off Hanami there. The way Hanami is being crushed is not even shown because he also turns off the lights. We get to see the damage when the lights flicker and come back on. Shota Kochizono never misses with the storyboard. This is another cut by Sota Yamazaki. It is again Isuta Meister's base, but it's been heavily redrawn to the point where it's Sota Yamazaki's animation. The hair is flawlessly animated, but of course the highlight is the clothing again. Let's play another game of count the number of shading layers. So there's the darkest color, 1. There's a slightly lighter color, 2. And there's another light color that's going through the edges. So that's 3 layers of shading for clothing, which is used of course to give volume and anatomy to Gojo's back. This layer and this layer pops out. His scapula, they're sticking out there, and there's a gap that goes inwards, which is this portion, which is highlighted with this line, and the shading being darker there. And it moves according to the way Gojo is moving. Did you know that Sota Yamazaki is a talented individual? I bet you didn't. The shading here is also definitely Yamazaki again, so I can only assume that the correction here is also Sota Yamazaki, though it does not really look anything like him. It looks more like Yosuke Yajima's correction. We get this long sequence of just conversation and pieces being put on the board, which is continuously made interesting through complex angles. We briefly get to see Jogo's face here again, when he's truly baffled by what Geto just said, and then he blows up, almost literally. This is another highlight of this episode. It is so well animated. I don't even think this is on the Boru, by the way. I wonder why, but this should definitely be on the Boru. I love the way the smoke is animated. It's really well done, and the character acting on Jogo is also really good. From the way the smoke is animated, I would have guessed that this would be like Ren Onodera's animation, but Ren Onodera is not credited, and I don't think he went NC for this. Starting from here, we got layouts by Van Oba. I love how animated he made Jogo. He does this when he sees Gojo following him. It's really cool. It's there in the layout as well, and it's carried forward into the final product really well. The background characters do look awkward if you focus on them, but if you just focus on Jogo, it does not matter whatsoever. Van Oba's layouts had a completely different approach, by the way. It made it look like Jogo was just zooming past all the civilians because of how fast they were going past the camera, but in the final product, they've been slowed down a lot. Such a damn cool storyboard idea again. Gojo is using blue here to attract himself to the wall, and the perspective drawing is just so goddamn precise as he's literally being rotated upwards. Such a cool shot. Again, the storyboards are what makes the animation shine in this case. The characters are actually looking at Gojo, they're turning towards them, which also deserves praises. However little it may be animated, it deserves praise, because I have to keep saying that this is ridiculous that you got these many characters, period. None of them are looking in Jogo's direction because they can't see Jogo, but then this guy just gets grabbed and then everyone looks at that guy. Sort of like this chromatic aberration effect here, if you can see it, to show Gojo's technique again. It's very minimal, and I like minimal compositing that also shows what it's supposed to show. This is another one of the highlight cuts of this entire episode. Unfortunately, it's also ghosted. I'm assuming these characters are traced on top of CGI models. So let's really break down what's going on here. You got a CGI background that is going to be rotated. You got individual crowd characters at varying levels also being rotated. Then you got the focus, which is Gojo, and the 3 characters who have stopped around him also rotating. while also erratically moving Jogo between the characters. I can't believe we're getting cuts like this when the production schedule is this bad. Again, just as impressive as the animation is also the compositing, because the compositing gets even lesser time. Another thing that Van Ober's layouts have is Jogo sticking out his tongue, which I don't know why he did that. I think it was a pretty good decision to remove it. So many crowd characters to draw. Oh my god, that's Naruto right there. Just 4 layers minimum at all times. Then you get shots like these where there are even more characters. Gosso's incredible idea of spacing and timing also comes into play, more so timing in this case. Wonderful sequence of cuts. And yeah, another bit of inconsistency with the crowd animation. Like, look at this guy. He's absolutely unfazed by all the death and destruction around him. But yeah, you can't really fucking expect Taku and Inuma level of mobs for every single cut. This cut also looks like it could use some work. Like, Gojo's features here are very much aliased. Just look at how inconsistent this line is. Once Gojo opens his eyes and the shot zooms out, it looks totally normal now. It looks much better. And the drawing is also really good. I'm assuming another Yosuke Ajima correction. You get a little bit more of that same error again, this time with the crowds as we zoom in. This is much better. The crowd, they're reacting appropriately. And Gojo's 6 eyes pick up something very sinister. The animation starts to get very limited here, which is, again, to be expected. There's so much stuff to draw. Regardless of schedule, I wouldn't expect anyone to draw all that many characters. I would expect them to be CGI, but at this point, CGI models would just further complicate the process anyway. Mahito comes surfing on a person and then reveals a hidden blade. There's nothing more engaging than a punch pointed straight at the camera. Drawings on Gojo here look very unique. Nothing like what we've seen from this episode or Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole. I would expect this drawing in like Attack on Titan, if that makes sense. It would actually fit the character designs of that show. Here the layering is also done really well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 characters who are 2D. Starting from this girl, this guy, they're all CGI. We got more 2D people falling down as well though. 2 really beautiful drawings on both of these guys. Nice bit of morphing animation here as well. And yeah, just another panning shot. Let's just let the effects animation do its thing. Just brutal to witness something like this. Gosso's idea of awesome timing comes into play here again. Just look at the snappiness of that. Not just the arm coming off, but also Gojo's surprise that the arm came off. In regular motion, yeah, the snappiness is really nice. I don't know why Jogo looks so slick here, as if he did something. Like, I mean, he surprised Gojo, but I guess it was just surprised as how fucking stupid that is. Another wonderful cut, so much movement, I can hear the in-betweeners crying. Gojo's hair here also flawlessly animated, all just a climax leading up to these 2 awesome drawings. This is like a pseudo dolly zoom, because Gojo is coming close to the camera here as well. Some really nice still shots here as well. Another awesome drawing. Particularly love Choso's expression here. Starting from here is the most technically impressive sequence of this episode. This is by Kaito Tomioka, the main animator of Jujutsu Kaisen. His output has been ridiculous. He animated in the first opening, then he animated a large chunk of episode 2, then he animated an opening 2, then a large chunk in episode 7, and now a large chunk in episode 9 as well. Like, I'm sure that having a very nice work desk definitely helps, but this output is still genuinely incredible. These smears and shapes are very much Kaito Tomioka-esque. Look at just how exaggerated this perspective is. Combined with the smears, truly gives the illusion that Gojo is moving extremely fast. Another thing that helps is, of course, the relative motion. The background is moving so fast. The background animation again done by Kaito Tomioka. Here he continuously breaks model between Gojo's legs. A lot of this animation is looped, so it's not as many drawings as you would think it has. But then again, the amount of stuff he has to draw, so many characters that he's drawing on screen right now, that's what makes it so impressive. This cut is a highlight, I would say, in this specific style, because the demons that he's ripping the heads off are completely different each time, and I can't tell a single crowd character who was reused. That was not looped at all, I feel like. Yeah, that's not looped at all. That's crazy. That's insane. The next cut, however, makes up for it because it's very obviously looped. You can tell very easily. We get classic Kaito Tomioka effects shapes here as well. Effects go in a swiping manner with sharp corners. So what do you do if you're already going incredibly fast but need to go faster? What you do is that you combine the Devilman Crybaby run with the Naruto run to create the Devilman Naruto run. Jokes aside, another incredible cut. The background animation is wonderful. The background being the characters. It's always kept fresh as well with cuts like this one. Just Gojo doing a trick in the air. A transfigured human's head in his hand. Cut of just background animation which is just heavily warped. First warped in like a concave manner, and then warped in a convex manner. More of Kaito Tomioka's classic blood animation, beautiful background animation. The next cut is Gojo going through all these characters again, while also ripping off completely unique heads. I cannot see the same curses twice. I also don't see the same characters twice. I love the air trick that Gojo does here. It turns him into a fucking UFO, and then as he lands, he grabs 2 curse heads and then pops them immediately to then drop kick another curse as he lands. This would look much better and much more clearer if it wasn't dimmed. Just as you think it's over, it keeps bloody going. Now no need to even show any of the characters. Just show Gojo's hand in a smeared fashion somewhere, and then just blood effects everywhere. And the vibration on Gojo's face here, because of how fast he's going. Kaito Tomioka was also credited for in-between animation in this episode, which could mean that all of the drawings made there are entirely by Kaito Tomioka without any additional in-betweening help. I already knew that Kaito Tomioka was a workhorse, but this is Sungo Park levels of ridiculousness. Now we get back to the cut by Osumin with these Ayaka Koiso corrections. This cut also looks really nice. The detail in this one is specifically very nice. Cool rotation shot on Gojo here. It is done in like 3 sequences. First we come close, then we rotate, then we like zoom out and keep rotating to reveal the cube. And yeah, something that was completely random that was thrown in before now comes into play. This is the Sayaka Koiso correction that I was talking about. Just a beautiful drawing. Nothing much to say about this. The opening of the gate also looks really cool. First we got Utapon style smears coming through the gate, then more really cool smears to then reveal the eye of the gate itself. Some of Osumin's animation was actually unused here. I'm assuming the layout just wasn't completed, but what was shown instead is still pretty damn cool. I love the timing of just showing that eye just like that. So I don't know if that change was made by Okura directing the episode or Shota Gojizono just supervising the entire project. And yeah, the 3 stages of reveal, 1, 2, 3, done so well, timed so well. Oh look, a fisheye shot. Actually not enough fisheye shots in this episode. Cool to see that it's still there. That's a wonderful goddamn drawing as well. And just from Gojo recognized Geto's voice. More flawless drawings of Gojo, and Gojo's first reaction is like a mix of surprise and happiness. And we flash through the images, which are dimmed and ghosted. I'm sure this is not intentional, the way these are flashing. It's flashing too fast, so I'm sure that's why it's dimmed and ghosted. I don't know why that's funny to me. Again, this is extremely well timed. It's literally coming from inside Gojo. And yeah, the reveal is also really well done. Love the drawings. I wish the mouth of the brain thing was also moving right now to show that the brain thing is the curse and it's just controlling Geto as a puppet. Also, it's just so creepy that it's leaking curse juice. Really creepy ideas like this work very well in dark fantasies, which is what Jujutsu Kaisen is trying to be, on top of also being a shonen. I also wonder if the thread that he's using is just hair from Geto's bangs. Really cool metaphoric shot. His eyes, the most powerful part of him, are not placed in the shot. It's blocked off by the thing that's literally holding him back. Cool re-reveal of Yuta. We're going back to Yuta not actually being part of the story, but also being part of it because of people just talking about it. Now we get to flashback of Jujutsu Kaisen 0 scene, which is again funny because it's still blurred and ghosted. Look at those beautiful Koki Fujimoto impact frames. My god, that is so painful to watch. The editing here is actually very good as well, because this Koki Fujimoto impact frame transitions to a Yoshihide Inoue impact frame right there. But because of the ghosting, you can't see it. You can't see the impact frame transition all that well. This episode actually had very little ghosting, and the dimming portion, which was Kaito Tomioka sequence, did not really ruining my enjoyment of the sequence either, but to see that the ghosting and dimming is still there is just disheartening. I knew Crunchyroll wouldn't give the slightest fuck about this because they are just that horrible a company. And first to come back to his senses is Mahito. And I guess Mekamaru had made some sort of a pact within himself that if he dies and Gojo gets sealed, he'll talk directly to Yuji about it. Cool decision on his part though to tell Yuji about it instead of anyone else. That is the end of the episode. Overall, a very good episode, the way it was put together, the way it was animated. I can't say flawless because obviously, as I pointed out, it had its fair share of flaws. Even still, I would say this was top 5 Jujutsu Kaisen episodes ever for me. In terms of direction, again, it's definitely top 5. 4 of those top 5 episodes being storyboarded by Gosso. And I really do hope that they go on another break, hopefully an extensive break. Like, I hope they break the core. Jujutsu Kaisen Core 1 and Core 2 would make this a much better experience. But considering there are rumors already going around that Chainsaw Man is currently in production, with some facts to also back that up, does not look like Jujutsu Kaisen is gonna get postponed. The abysmal production cycle of Sesshoma's team will just endlessly continue. So yeah, anyway, really wish to see more of Gosso's storyboards. Also, would be interesting to see if Daniel Kim sticks around with this project till the very end. If yes, I wonder just how many scenes he's gonna animate. Really cool new animator who's now in everyone's radar, I'm very sure. If you like this video, leave a like. If you did not like this video, leave a dislike. Subscribe and share, spread the love, and that's about it. Thanks for the views.